We've talked on the YouTube channel in the past, guys, quite a bit about Prototype and the future of this franchise, but we've also talked about the past, the present, and as I said, we've been talking more recently about the future of this franchise. You guys can check out all of that content here on the YouTube channel. And what I wanted to talk about in this first segment of the show, guys, is everything that we want out of Prototype 3, the unannounced project that we're hoping comes out at some point or another in the foreseeable future. And when I say we, guys, I'm mainly talking about myself here, and I'll give you guys my opinions on the things that I want to see out of Prototype 3. Some of you very well may agree with some of these, some of you may not. I would love to hear what you guys want to see in Prototype 3 in the comment section down below. So let's get into it. So right off the bat, guys, I think it's really important that Prototype 3 goes back to kind of, the follow-up to the first game, which obviously we've up to this point, we've had Prototype 1 and Prototype 2. I think it's important, though, that we go back to Alex Mercer's narrative and his story. I want to see the continuation of the story based upon Alex Mercer. And it's only because the second game I thought was a significant downgrade as far as, like, on a number of fronts, which we'll get to here, but I thought that the first game was great. I loved the way that the feeling of it. I thought that it kind of reminded me a little bit of Infamous, just, different abilities and things of that nature. But Prototype, the first one, had some really special aspects to it. And what I loved about Alex Mercer's character was the mystery behind this guy. And so I think I would really like to see a continuation of his narrative moving forward. And that leads me into the next thing, guys, which is more things to do along the journey. Having more things that we can do along Prototype 3's campaign, whether that be that, just being Alex Mercer as a normal civilian, being able to walk into stores and being able to do a multitude of different other side missions, which of course we've had in the first couple of games, guys, but I'd like to see an expansion upon that. More places that we're able to explore and such, and more things to do along the journey, that being like side missions. And that leads me to the next thing, which of course is going to be new characters, new environments, new enemies. And I think with that, guys, I want some of the characters to be, some of them to be the same from the previous entries. I want some of them to be new characters as well. New enemies, but also having some existing ones from the previous games kind of leaves you with some familiarity to the franchise. And so I think that's really important moving into Prototype 3, where we have some locations that we're exploring that feel familiar, but also a bunch of locations that are different and kind of have some change, have a little bit of some change to it. So I think having a little bit of both of those is really important moving into Prototype 3, especially when they're trying to kind of define this franchise that we haven't seen a continuation of in quite some time. The next thing, though, for me, guys, is with Prototype, the question of, whether or not they should somewhat do, because we kind of alluded to Alex Mercer and kind of his continuation in the story. I'm wondering if doing like a soft reboot would be an interesting concept moving into the next generation of consoles, being the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. I think that with the updated graphics and things of that nature, you could do a soft reboot of Prototype if you decided to, moving into the next generation of consoles, because a lot of people may not have played the original two Prototype games. Many of us have, but some people that are just going to be buying the next generation hardware may never played the Prototype game, so it might be interesting to see a soft reboot done at the same time. Which leads me to the next thing, guys. Another thing that really brings people back to a franchise after the campaign is done is things outside of that, being multiplayer and co-op modes. And I think it's going to be really important, guys, that even if you had co-op where you had Alex Mercer as a playable character, but you also had characters from the second Prototype game that are playable characters within the co-op realm might be very interesting. And bringing in multiplayer, I think some multiplayer elements to this could be really interesting, whether that be PvE or PvP, where maybe you have something where you're going up against waves and waves of enemies that you can play with your friends with different abilities and such, and as each wave goes, you're kind of getting new abilities, or you can craft new abilities and upgrade and such. I think there's some really interesting concepts that could be explored there with multiplayer as well as co-op modes. And that leads me to the next thing, guys, which, kind of ends off the main things that I want, which we could go on and on about, many different things, I think, about this game, like the abilities, how we would love to see new abilities coming into Prototype 3, like some new abilities, maybe Alex Mercer has evolved in other ways, or whatever it might be, guys. I think having new abilities and new ways that you can traverse the world around you, as well as yourself with customization and things of that nature, I think it would make it really special. But I think the main thing for me is having free-to-play elements to Prototype 3, like that being like multiplayer and co-op, having that as free-to-play where everyone may just at least try it out. We look at so many games that are AAA titles, guys, that are coming out now that have free-to-play aspects to them, like Call of Duty Warzone, which is free to play, and, a number of other games out there, right? And so I think Prototype could do really well if they've kind of promoted as such as it was, this game with all these abilities and such, and I think people would enjoy that. But in free-to-play, it would get more and more people to try it out, which could really ultimately grow the fan base and really maybe almost guarantee a continuation of this series moving forward. But those are the main things that I want to see, guys, in Prototype 3. Let me know in the comment section below, what do you guys want to see in Prototype 3? Let me know, guys. Let's have a real conversation about it. And for more Prototype 3 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV.